Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at Batman Gotham Knight. Now, Batman Gotham Knight is actually a very interesting concept in the sense that, similar to the Animatrix, which was a thing that came out way back when Matrix was popular, I think like 2006 or 7 around that, I want to guess. It was similar that the sense that multiple studios, anime studios, mind you, like Madhouse, Studio 4C, Project IG, B Train, they all decided to make different kind of takes on what Batman was essentially. And so what they did with these different takes is actually make a conclusive amount of stories that had these kind of almost in between movie things where similar to the Animatrix was actually a prologue, it was a sequel, it was also an in between type thing. It was supposed to be in between Batman Begins and Batman Dark Knight, which was the first movie, the second movie. Now, with anything else, it's like I think the compilation type things like this, where different studios are working on it, you have your ups and downs. Batman Gotham Knight, however, I think one thing it does very successfully is that even the downs of this weren't that bad. All of the studios handled, each type of movie very well and very kind of interesting on how they had Batman. They had Batman sometimes very dark and gritty. They sometimes had him as a mythical being. They sometimes had him as a just kind of super armored unit. And it was very interesting because all of these kind of can fit into the Batman lore, somewhere or another. Because there's a lot of times where if you read any of the Batman comics, like if you're a fan of DC, you will notice that Batman is talked about by multiple criminals and stuff like that as being this kind of creepy figure that goes through the ground or just appears out of nowhere and has this dark, menacing approach to him that you don't know what he's going to come out of next. He might fly out of the sky like a giant bat. He might just be this weird, super blur effect of a creature that just runs past you, knocks you out, and that's it. And, all those things are handled in this movie pretty well. So I liked that concept of it. I love the animations from all the different studios. I think, I want to say, honestly, my favorites were probably Production IG and, Studio 4C. I think they really handled the better alliterations of Batman Gotham Knight. But I'm not saying B Train was bad. I'm not saying that at all. I just think B Train was like, a little bit typical for a kind of Batman story. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was typical, and I could have seen that any other type of Batman, anime or Batman cartoon for that matter. Now, I almost am trying to think of how I want to rate each one. I was thinking maybe I would rate each one individually because honestly, each one is its own story. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do that, but I am going to give it aggregate score because honestly, this is no matter what a compilation film. So this is not meant to be by itself per se, if that makes any sense, but it's meant to be seen as a together unit. And even though each studio does different things with it, all the kind of short stories, even though they're done by different studios, kind of tie in together with one another. So it's meant to be a continuation more than a individuality. Now, Have I Got a Story for You, which was done by Studio 4C, has various kids talking about Batman and talking about this kind of mythical being that comes into the play that's almost like a giant bat at first, and they talk about how he's actually kind of like a shadowy figure. And then of course you have Batman coming in, which I think was probably the worst part of the movie that actually showed Batman he was really skinny and very, very lanky looking, but overall, I liked the story for it. I thought it was interesting to see the different alliterations of Batman in the story. So I would give that a solid B. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was bad. But again, I think my biggest issue with it was the fact that Batman looked like that. Oh, and by the way, I'm not gonna say it's this whole how the sound was, like voice acting was, until the very end, because the voice acting for each one was the same. Most of the characters reprised their roles. Excuse me if I could speak English today. Reprised their roles in each one of the short stories, despite them being done by different studios. Now, Crossfire, which was done by Production IG, which again is one of my favorite studios too, was done where kind of more so we see the story being told by Lieutenant James Gordon, who's talking about the various things that are happening in the city of Gotham, and he's talking about how Batman is really needed, but also his actual group that's following Lieutenant Gordon at that time don't know if they trust Batman. They're really like on the fence about trusting him because he's kind of this figure that is a vigilante, and most cops aren't too thrilled on having vigilantes do their job essentially. Now this story was done very well. I liked the concepts of it. I actually really thought the characters were really well done. I love the animation. I thought it was all stellar. That's why I give this one a solid B plus. It was very, very good. Voice acting, again, I'm not going to talk about till the very end of this. Now, The next one on the list of Batman stories was Field Test. This was done by B Train. This was more so showing Lucius Fox and Batman and kind of the various weapons and tools that Batman uses in his fight against crime. Now, I'm not saying that this was bad looking because I know I said early on this was probably my weaker one of the two, or of the multiple ones actually. Excuse me, but I felt that this story was not really important. It was more so a kind of just blase look at, oh, let's just show what his various tools are and stuff like that. But I did like one thing about this, and I think it was one of the coolest things, is I actually liked how they showed Batman overall. I thought Batman's armor was really cool, and honestly, the concept of him using a power that he gets at one point, and then how that kind of backfires on him was an interesting take on Batman, because Batman is really not about harming innocents. He's usually harming bad people, and him actually hurting someone by using a technology was an interesting take on Batman. So overall, this one I give a solid B to it. Like, again, you might say, well, you said, it was the weaker one. I gave the other one a B. It's the weaker one of the bunch, but that doesn't mean by any means it's bad. It's just I thought it was a little weaker because I think it was a little bit too out of the realm for Batman in one sense, because I mean it really went with the super anime take on him, but I love the way they did his armor and stuff like that, and I also like the concept of the story. I just felt that they could have done a little bit more with it. I felt like the story could have been exposed a little bit stronger, and I felt that some of the other animations could have been a little bit stronger as well, but overall it's still good. It was the weaker one of the few, but I think it was still very, very good. Now, In Darkness by Madhouse, you know Madhouse. You know that they're gonna have blood. They're gonna have, very surreal imagery. Actually, the image I'm using right now, I believe, is the one from Madhouse. I love this version of Batman. I think this is the strongest one here because it shows Batman being almost akin to what he was in the older comics, of being this really dark, menacing figure. Not afraid to beat the crap out of people, not afraid to almost kill people in the process of him fighting crime. This one was a great story. I loved it. Honestly, A- for hands down. Now, one of the final ones, actually no, I believe there's still two more. I apologize. Second to last, I'll say that. Working Through Pain, which was done by Studio 4C. This one I don't remember too much. I remember it vaguely, and I know that sounds like, well, how am I supposed to review it? I remember enough of it that I can say that it wasn't bad, but again, being forgettable means that to me, it wasn't anything spectacular. Now, I love the animation because Studio 4C really is very strong on how they do their animations in general. I love the way Batman was done. I love the way the characters were. That's why even with me forgetting the story and the concepts of it to a point, I still give it a solid B. I thought it was very good. Now, the last one is Deadshot by Madhouse. This is one of my favorite ones of this because, again, it's, Batman being gritty again and Madhouse being, with their violence and using the darker tones. This has, of course, Deadshot, which is an assassin. It has Batman going up against them and, having various characters like Lieutenant Gordon and stuff like that come up here. I will say that this one is probably one of the cooler ones of them all. Also, I give this a solid B+ because it was great animation, great story. Now, overall, the voice acting was stellar in this. Actually has a lot of voice acting from the typical DC Batman, which means Kevin Conroy. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he does most of the Batman. I'm not saying all of them, but he does a majority of the Batmans from the various comics and the cartoons and stuff like that. And I love his voice acting. I think he really fits Batman to a T. I think he's like one of the best voices for Batman. There are also several others that are in here. They're both from anime and also from various other DC comic movies and stuff like that. They all do a very stellar job. I love the music. I love the soundtrack for this. I thought it was really great to actually have the kind of usual tune and mood for this series in general. That's why, if I had to review everything together, this is all together, I would say Batman Gotham Knight, if I gave it a rating from A through F, solid B. It's not a bad thing at all. I know people get scared of these kind of compilation type things because, I am going to review Halo Legends compilation and also the Animatrix eventually on my channel. Probably not anytime today, but maybe within the next coming weeks. Actually, well, maybe probably this week because I might have to do my reviews for them a little earlier than usual. But I will say right now that, don't be afraid of this compilation. Don't be afraid that, it must be a cartoon because it's Batman. It has nothing to do with anime. I will say that you must give this a try because honestly, it might even make you a Batman fan. I'll be honest with you because I'm not a huge Batman fan. I like Batman, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a die-hard Batman fan. And I find that when you see stuff like this, it almost wants you to keep watching Batman stuff. You're like, let me see if I can find anything close or similar to this. And that is a rarity in anything. So definitely check this out. I highly recommend it. Anyways, guys and girls, I'll talk to you all later. As usual, please rate, comment, subscribe, share the video. The whole nine. And as always, until our paths cross again in the next review, have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.